And then you add to the fact that I literally used to joke, it takes an army of mirrors and lights and contortionist level abilities to actually get a good view of it and what is going on. And half of it you are just never going to actually see with your own eyes. Welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast, a place for parents to come and learn together about the sometimes bumpy road back into the saddle of their sex life after adoption, childbirth, or joining a blended family. I am your host, Sophia Ashley, certified sex educator and sex coach, mother and stepmother, and your totally TMI guide to becoming BFFs with your body and initiating easy, connected, and confident, naked, sexy fun times. Here we are, one part science of sex, one part mindfulness magic, and one part straight up real talk to help you find the spark in your relationship and yourself after kids. I am so glad you are here. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Sex After Kids podcast. Today we're talking all about the JJs. That's a vulva, but you know what I mean. If you are a penis owner, I'd love for you to stick around, get a little compassion and understanding for what your partner might be going through, and hopefully open up some juicy conversation. Let's dive into it. So my question for the vagina owners listening would be, how long has it been, or when was the last time that you talked to your vagina, aka masturbated? If you are listening to this podcast, I am willing to bet you either talk to your vagina fairly frequently, but they are quick, very brief chats with a very utilitarian focus, i.e. rubbing one out so you can get to sleep or burn off the itch. Or you can't even think of the last time you did it. And I get it. I've been there. And that's actually how the Happy Vagina Project even started. It's how the whole thing came about. I spent my 20s feeling like I was pushing my orgasms up a hill and they never fell down the other side. I was constantly at the doctor's office with one infection or another, not STIs, but like general grade lady stuff, vagina stuff. I was starting to experience painful intercourse, and I was literally cursing my vagina every chance that I could. Just thinking, why aren't you fucking cooperating with me? What is wrong with you? What is going on, right? I wanted to blame, point fingers. And so this was the relationship that I had with my vagina. And it also came from not really hanging out with her very much unless a guy was there, right? So I wasn't really hanging out with my vagina one-on-one unless there was a penis present. And that comes from a very deep place, right? Though our society sort of shames masturbation in general for all genders, there seems to be like at least a little bit more acceptance or normalcy around young men and young penis owners playing with that part of their body. And when I think of my son and the fact that his penis is a thing that sticks out of his body and he can have an open, transparent, like very engaged relationship with this part of his body, it's very obvious when it is aroused and ready to go. It is very obvious when it hurts and something's wrong with it. I get it, right? That relationship is not fraught or mysterious from the beginning, rather quite the opposite. And then on top of that, we really do add a layer of shame around women and touching their own bodies. And I think that comes partly from, pleasure is not, sexual pleasure is not a thing for women to experience, right? We are here to make babies. Vaginas are here to make babies. It comes from believing that sexual mastery is supposed to come from men, and that we're supposed to be taught sexual mastery from our partners if we are to be sexually masterful at all. There's a lot of shame and taboo around being a woman who's sexually empowered, being a woman who knows her body. And so we just don't. And then you add to the fact that I literally used to joke, it takes an army of mirrors and lights and contortionist level abilities to actually get a good view of it and what is going on. And half of it you are just never going to actually see with your own eyes. Although there's some really cool things you can do to check out your cervix, right? Your actual vagina and a bunch of your erogenous zones, including the majority of your clitoris, are not visible from the outside. And so our relationship with our vaginas ends up being fraught, distant, it feels complicated. It's not a relationship of harmony. It's not a relationship of best friends, which is the whole goal, the whole point of the Happy Vagina Project. So, what does that have to do with your sex after kids life, though? Like, Sophia, I get it when you're talking about knowing what your body wants. I get it when you're talking about like your 20s, but what does this have to do with my sex life now that I've had kids? And it has a few things to do with your sex life. And in fact, a few keys, I guess, that can help you find your way back to your libido and find your way back to just sexual pleasure after children, regardless of whether those children happened recently or a long time ago. So let's get into it, right? I think the first thing that I want people to sort of like question or process, and I invite you to consider, like, what is your relationship with your vagina? Do you tolerate her? Are you resentful and upset with her that she does not provide what you think she's supposed to provide? Do you feel like she has let you down? She's not horny for the sex anymore, and that's making you feel like a bad wife, like a bad partner, because you can't provide sex in the ways that you want to or would like to. Are you guys BFFs? Do you know each other super well? Do you talk regularly? If you could think of your vagina as a person, if you could even name her, if she was a person on the other end of the couch having coffee with you, how would you characterize that relationship? And you can pause me here if you're listening, maybe even journal it on it if you want, or just think about it as I'm talking. I think a lot of us, pre-kids or not, tend to think of our vaginas as almost this piece of our body that we can like take off, put in a closet, allow it to just sort of collect dust and take it out every once in a while to perform a duty or a job, and then put it back. And that somehow that doesn't harm other parts of ourselves, right? We think of it as like this detachable, separate part of ourselves rather than something that's deeply integrated into our whole well-being. And how is it integrated into your whole well being? Well, you've got massive amounts of pleasure nerves and pleasure centers headed in that direction. And so when it comes to like flooding your body with yummy feel good hormones, that part of your body's like direct access to that. It's also great for your immune system when you're having great orgasms. And when you're feeling that kind of pleasure, it alleviates stress. And your sexuality, right? If we talk about sexuality more broadly, is not just about genitals, right? So when we think of sex ed, we want to sort of pin it into like bodies and biological functions. But if you're any kind of budding feminist or experienced feminist, you know that sexuality has to do with your very identity. It has to do with the opportunities that you have access to in the world. It has to do with how people treat you. It has to do with how people think they can treat your body and what you can and cannot do with your body. It has to do with how you get medical care. It has to do with touch and our biological need for touch and affection and connection with other humans, right? Sexuality is a very, very broad thing. It is not just penises and vaginas or intersex bits, right? So if you are in a state where you are not visiting this part of your body, you are treating it as detachable, you parked her after the grand event of having a babe and you locked it up in a closet and you visit it infrequently, this might have something to do with your desire for sex, but also how you feel as a human, as a person, with your connection to pleasure and desire in all of your life for all things, right? About the erotic and like living erotically, which just means living fully alive. And if you're feeling a sense of dullness, if you are feeling like you are only defined by your motherhood or your parenthood right now, if you are feeling like sex is a chore, it can be partially because you're treating it that way, right? And I'm not putting this all on you. This podcast is all about the intersectional multiple factors that are going on just today. In this slice of the episode, we are looking at one lever of change that you have, which is exploring, thinking about, and changing your relationship with your vagina. The other thing about our vaginas that I think has been a huge growth journey for me and still is that our vaginas are very much the canary in the coal mine. There's a book out there called The Fifth Vital Sign. I am forgetting the author at the moment, amazing Black author, who talks about the fact that for people with vaginas, our cycle and the health of our vagina, our hormones, and our menstruation are another vital sign equivalent to your heartbeat, like your pulse, your respiration, your circulation, in terms of knowing what is going on with your body. And when we are out of sync with our periods, which is typically what we're taught, right? How many of you are on an IUD and grateful you never get a period? No shade here. Just how many of you are like, yeah, I'm so grateful I don't get a period. I don't have to deal with that inconvenient, annoying thing, right? Again, another area in society where we get taught that periods are gross, periods are disgusting, periods are just another inconvenience to deal with when we're talking about living in a male world that's built for a male body that works on a 28-hour hormone cycle, or sorry, 24-hour hormone cycle, instead of a 28-day hormone cycle like ours. And so much has changed in my level of personal awareness and my level of health awareness once I started embracing my cycle and understanding my cycle and knowing what was normal for me in my cycle and what was not. And in fact, I'm glad like I started that process before I had kids. And one of the things that got me my Hashimoto's diagnosis, which is a thyroid disorder, is that it fucks with your moods, in particular in your luteal. And I was hitting my luteal going, I have never felt this emotionally out of control in my life. I do not like how I'm feeling. The amount of sensory overload I was experiencing in my luteal was out of this world. And it was one of the reasons I went to the doctor to be like, I think something's off here. Like my premenstrual symptoms are very different than they have ever been. So your vagina is the canary in the coal mine. She tells you things. When I was with that guy in my 20s who didn't really like to do foreplay very much, I was experiencing a lot of bacterial vaginosis and yeast infections because I was having a lot of sex that wasn't really super great, that wasn't really pleasure focused, that wasn't really me focused. And that was my fault and his fault. And instead of reading the signs my vagina was telling me, I was getting pissed at her. I was blaming her. I was like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you cooperating? And she's like, excuse me, I'm letting you know that the conditions are not working for me and we need to change something, right? So we need to think of this part of our body not as a detachable thing we can take on and off, but as central to our emotional well-being, our spiritual well-being, our physical well-being, and to treat it as such, right? That means getting to know it. That means getting to know our cycle and the way it regulates our moods, our pain, and how we're feeling in our body in a month. And it also means actually getting to know like its anatomy and what it's capable of and what it does. It means thinking of it the way you think of your best friend. You think of your best friend as this like fabulous, amazing, talented, compassionate human. And you know her likes and her dislikes. You know what's going to surprise her. You know what she's going to enjoy, and you know how to show up for her. And most importantly, like I talk about all the time, you know how to throw a party she wants to show up to, right? People with penises who are listening, you can think about this in the same way. How well do you know your partner's vagina? What are some of the ways that we can get to know her, right? So, I hope I'm making the case for why it's important to have a relationship with your own vagina, both sexually and non-sexually, right? This is about connecting with your overall health. This is about connecting with your overall pleasure in and out of the bedroom. This is about connecting with a lot of the essence of who you are. And I'm not saying your genitals define the essence of who you are. I'm just saying that they're intrinsically connected to, if we talk about chakras, that's the seat of your desire, your fantasy. It's the seat of your magnetism and what you attract in the world. It really is the epicenter of what we bring into the world. And it's the same for penis owners, and it's the same for anybody, regardless of what genitals they have. And that doesn't have to define the gender that we live in, right? It just means that's the epicenter of our power. The very first book that I read on this topic was Vagina, a New Biography by Naomi Klein. And she talked about how if women in particular or vagina owners were orgasming to the maximum of their capacity, we would be running the fucking world. And there's a reason that the patriarchy has locked down our pleasure, and it's because it knows that this is the center of our power. So if you've cut that off from yourself, just like the patriarchy has asked you to, and if you've locked it up into a closet, just like the patriarchy has demanded that you do, you have cut yourself off from your power. And I am on a mission, certainly with my daughter, to make sure that she and my son, to make sure that they are connected with their bodies and their emotions, with all parts of their bodies. Their vagina is no different than their elbow. Okay? So what does it mean to know your vagina? What are some ways that we can do this? And what are some ways that we can do this for ourselves? And what are some ways that our partner can do this with us? So firstly, on a very individual kind of reflection level, if touching yourself feels overwhelming and out of reach right now, then you can start really simply by writing letters. You can write a letter from yourself to your vagina, or you can write a letter from your vagina to you. Set a timer for like 20 minutes, get a blank piece of paper. Don't think about it, just write, "Dear vagina," or "Dear me," and start writing stream of consciousness and see what comes out. And if you need a starting point, what I used to do is think about the history of my relationship with my vagina. When was the first time we met? What are some peak amazing experiences we've had together? What are some challenging things that we've had to navigate together? When did our relationship feel really great? And what does it feel like now? What do we wish it felt like? And what could we do to change that? Think about it as a timeline, right? Some of you met your vaginas when you were 3 and you noticed it felt great to wiggle around on the floor in a certain way. And some of you, like me, never really consciously masturbated until I was like 17, and some older guy was grooming me and invited me to do that and send him sexy stories, right? Some of you may not have really met your vagina until the first time you had sex, and maybe it was wonderful and sweet and loving and amazing, and that is awesome, right? Some of you may have trauma around your vagina and your birth. And I've probably shared pieces of my birth story here, right? But my birth, especially with my second son, heavily fraught with a lot of emotion that still comes up for me during sex. Some of us feel like our vaginas let us down during birth if we ended up with a C-section and weren't capable of doing the vaginal delivery that we had really hoped for. Some of us may have never let that go, even though we had kids like 10 years ago. That can still be sitting with us, right? So giving yourself the time to just say hello by playing with your imagination to this part of your body can reveal to you kind of a bit of a report card on where things are at and where there might be some room for change and what that change could offer you. The second way that you can talk to your vagina is just to sit and meditate and talk to her. And you can do this just in a regular meditation seat, or you can do this by actually putting your hand on your vulva, clothed or unclothed, whatever feels good, or even like your lower body. Like your lower belly, and kind of imagining your womb space. And you can do sort of the same thing, right? So you can take a couple deep breaths, really ground into the moment. Maybe I'll, record a little meditation for you guys I can send off. Watch the newsletter for that. And you're just going to sit, take some deep breaths, and bring your mind's eye, bring your attention down to that part of your body. And you can just ask it some questions, right? You can ask it like how it's feeling today. You can ask it what it needs right now. You can ask it what its hopes and dreams are for your sex life. You can ask it what kind of relationship it wants with you and what it would love from you or for you. You can send it apologies. You can send it gratitude. You can send it thanks. So you can do this whole process more so in your mind with imagery and imagined words, or you can even say those words out loud rather than writing, just kind of a different sort of experience. And then the last way to visit and get to know your vagina is really with masturbation. And for the penis owners listening, this wouldn't necessarily be masturbation, but we would call it like pleasure mapping, which is whether you're, let's start with masturbation, right? So the way to get to know your vagina masturbation, and I'm not talking like wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of masturbation. I'm talking like more intentional, present, connected masturbation. And so a really simple way to do that is to just set a timer for 20 minutes. Set yourself up, have a little sex date for yourself, right? Like do the mood lighting, do the music. Take a couple deep breaths. Start with your hand just like on your pussy, on your vulva. Get really present. Maybe even actually say like, "Hello, I'm coming to say hello." And then you can either just masturbate while you ask your vagina some of those questions and see what images, sensations, or emotions arise in you and then journal afterwards. Or you can masturbate with the intention of exploring your vagina and the things that bring it pleasure. And so that means like maybe you download OMG Yes. I'll put the link in the show notes. That is a platform that's discovered or like named and labeled 44 different kinds of clitoral and vulval like stimulation and masturbation techniques. And so maybe you do this guided and you like learn a couple techniques and you explore and you see what you like. Or you take a color by number anatomy workshop with me, or you explore some anatomy books and you discover the 11 different erogenous zones in there, and you go and find your P spot, and you go and find your A spot, you go and find your cervix, and you go and find your perineal sponge, and you play around with what feels good, what speed, what pressure, and what kind of touch feel good in different parts of your body. Especially after children, if you are feeling numbness, if you are feeling pain, if you are feeling irritation, if you are finding that things that used to get you off really quickly and easily are not working anymore, then taking some time to map what feels good now, today, is going to be really important. And that's a way of getting to know your vagina. For the penis owners, one thing that can be really interesting, and this is something you can do for vagina owners, if you masturbate in front of a mirror, you can actually take the time to observe how your vulva in particular changes over the course of your arousal. Because your labia will like darken in color. You should be able to see them like visibly get puffier, and you might notice wetness and stuff like that. It could be very interesting to masturbate in front of a mirror and just get curious about how your vagina changes throughout arousal. And if you're a penis owner, it can be very cool to go down on your partner and use fingers or mouths or toys and to pause as you're going through and take the time to notice, like, what does my partner's vulva look like after a minute or 3 minutes of stimulation? What does my partner's vulva look like after 10 minutes of stimulation, after 20 minutes of stimulation, while she's orgasming or while they're orgasming, after orgasm? That is next level awareness of your bits, my friends, but it's fertile ground for next level orgasms, next level pleasure, next level yumminess. So that is my short and sweet rant for you today. Please stop treating your vagina as a thing you can just detach and throw in the closet. It is a central part of who you are. And if you are not craving sex, like even a little bit at all, because I'm not totally a proponent of saying we're going to get back to like juicy, crazy, hot, wet pussies all the time. But if you're not craving it like ever at all, you may want to start with, what is this relationship like? And if this relationship is adversarial, if there's grief, if there's resentment, if there's frustration there with your sexuality, with this part of your body, then it's no wonder that you're not raging hot, horny, and craving sex. And this is not to say there are not things that your partner doesn't need to do or shift or change for you to enjoy sex more too. But the lever that you can pull, the control that you have in this situation is to start a dialogue with your body, find out what it needs, and start to give it to your body yourself, and develop the courage to voice to your partner what it is that your body needs. And the more you can start there, it's not going to be the be all end all necessarily, but it's a powerful starting point for finding your way back to your desire for sex, to your confidence in articulating what you might even want in the bedroom if you struggle with that, and to finding more pleasure and play both in the bedroom and out. I hope you enjoyed today. If you are wanting to dive deeper on this, I have a couple weeks left before I open the doors to the Naked Fun Comeback. This is a 90-day couples program that you can take it solo and benefit immensely to bring more play and pleasure and sex back into your post-kids life. And this element that we just talked about today is one of the key elements. So pillar number 2 in the program is understanding your body and how to throw a party that your libido wants to show up to, whether you're the lower libido partner or whether you're the partner who's trying to support. And so if you are excited to dive into this more, if you want to do color by number anatomy together, if you want to understand how to do pleasure mapping and do that all with some support, then send me an email. I will send you the details for the Naked Fun Comeback. All you need are about 30 minutes to an hour a week for lessons and reflection, and one hour date night a month. Trying to keep this super accessible, even if you are super busy. And I have insane founders pricing right now for the first 15 people who sign up. So come email me if you want the deets, or come find me over at Instagram and we'll talk about whether this is right for you. I am very excited to chat with you, and let me know what you thought of this episode. And if you do one of the activities, let me know how it went for you. I would love to hear. Have a great day. This is the part where we do the end bit, right? My friends, let's take a mindfulness minute here. Take a deep breath in. Open that mouth and let out a big, deep, full body sigh. Voila. Your nervous system thanks you. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that your head and your heart have something new to consider, something new to talk about, and something new to try. No husbands were harmed in the making of this podcast, and a big thank you to my husband for his help and original music composition. Love you, babe. This podcast was recorded on the traditional territories of the Kwanlin First Nation and Tonquichan Council in Whitehorse, Yukon. We acknowledge and are grateful to the original stewards of this land where we get to play, live, and raise our children. You can catch me on the Instagram at the Happy V Project for tips, tools, and anecdotes. And you can also join the weekly-ish newsletter for dispatches from my bedroom and my brain. Also, head to thehappyvaginaproject.com to learn more about how you can work with me. Catch you next time.